I mean, when I started reading, I read a lot of fantasy and sci-fi. I read Piers Anthony, and I read Orson Scott Card, and I read Robert Aspern, I think his name is. I read a lot of fantasy. I read the Philip Jose Farmer Riverworld series. I have very strong memories of reading that. And I actually recently reread the first one. I was like, oh, it isn't that good, but it's pretty good. When I was 12 and 13, I read, which again, I recently reread the Wild Cards books, which is an anthology of sort of speculative science fiction that was edited by George R. R. Martin, actually, who is now very well known as the Game of Thrones author. So I read a lot of fantasy and sci-fi, and then I think as I got older, I got into... I remember I got really into Dickens really young, like in my late teens and early 20s, and I remained very into Dickens, just as the sort of consummate creator of memorable characters and consummate plot maker. And those are skills that I really value in a writer. Not just beautiful lyrical sentences, but really strong characters, really quickly and well-defined, and a lot of interesting things going on in the story, you know. Well, I don't know if this counts, but I would call on Tom Ripley from Patricia Highsmith's The Talented Mr. Ripley and its sequels, because although he is a sociopath and although he is evil to his core, Tom Ripley is the consummate problem solver, and all that he does over the course of those books is do terrible things and then find ways to get out of them. So I think if I was in a bad situation, I think I would call Tom Ripley, and then I would be terrified because I would owe him something. Exposition, really clunky exposition. I think it's something that writers generally work their way out of as you grow as a writer, as you become more careful with your work. I hate scenes where a character just comes into the crime scene and says, "Well, as the senior investigator here, it's important that I say the following," and it's like nobody says that. If all the characters who are present on the page already know the information, there's no reason for that information to be announced other than the writer's need for the reader to know it. What the good writer learns is that readers are patient, and they will follow even if they don't know everything. They will keep up with you, and it's better to leave stuff out and let us wonder about it than it is to tell us everything because you're worried that we don't know. So that's what often bothers me. And then just sort of cliches. I'm always caught up on the page by someone using a very familiar phrase or a very easy description, of something. I think what we love in writing is when we are surprised, whether it's by story or by word choice or by some detail of a character. So anything that doesn't surprise, even if it's at the level of using a kind of boring idiom or simile, anything that doesn't surprise us is not, is boring. So I'm working on a new book, and I'm about halfway through or so, which hopefully, knock on wood, will come out at some point, not next year, but in 2016. So I will keep you informed. But we should actually have a deal for it pretty soon, and I'll be able to talk more about it. But
Good.
It's a big crime novel set in Indianapolis, where I live.
Excellent.